August 24th, 2020, Springfield Community Economic Development Commission meeting to order. Abby, would you read the roll, please? Call the roll.
Karen Hahn.
Okay, she's there. I see her.
You'll have to keep it held down. Karen Hahn.
She's there. I see her.
Here, present.
Nate Fretz.
Present.
Sandy Hamilton. Lakeisha Purchase.
Here.
Dave Robinson.
Here.
Sheila Stock-Smith.
Here.
Mark Vance.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. As we currently don't have a chair of this commission, I will serve in that capacity for today. Has everyone had a time to read the April 24th, 2020 meeting minutes? May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Who moved?
I think Mark moved.
Hey.
Mark?
Oh, Nate.
Nathan?
Sorry.
Okay, Nathan. Second by Lakeisha?
Yes.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. In our new business today, we have first an update on our CDBG COVID programs. Last Thursday, we launched our rental assistance program. The city had received $799,000 in CARES Act funding through our CDBG funds, and we set aside $400,000 to go towards rental assistance. That was for 400 families to be helped at $1,000 each. As of the very first day, the Urban League, we partnered with the Urban League, and they're running the program for us, and as of the first day, they received 437 requests on the very first day. The second day, it was well over 300. They're continuing to take names currently. However, as you can see, we've had quite the request, and what we're doing right now is then following up to see that everyone is qualified for that funding. So I think it's going to go very quickly, and as you can see, we've got quite the need in our community. Have any questions? Yes, Lakeisha.
Yes.
I'm not
No,
right.
it's good.
Okay, will Urban League be following up with the landlords, like calling them?
Yes.
As well? Because I know some tenants have already went in and said they just got their name put on a list, but they didn't get the rest of the instructions of how it would go with landlords.
And that was because of the abundance of calls that they received. So their names were taken down. They will get a call back. They'll get all the documentation that is required through the HUD funding. We have to have certain documentations, and then one of those they will reach out to the landlords and confirm, and the money will go directly to the landlord.
Okay, and my second question, Val, is will this be, I know it's $500 for each month for 2 months. Will you do the first month and then wait to the second month, or if they were behind 2 months, will it just be one payment?
It's one payment for they're eligible up to $1,000.
Okay. Gotcha.
Val, I have a question.
Sure.
How did the notice go out for, so that people knew that it was time to make this request, and to whom?
So it went out we initially sent it out. It was on our website. We announced it at City Council. Julia put it in her news that she sends out all the time. We were on Marcus Johnson, who's been working with me at the Urban League. We were on the radio. We were on TV. So
you
we
think
got
it
the
went
word out.
pretty
I feel like
broadly,
we did the best we
got
could.
700 in 2 days, right?
Yes.
The word
Yeah.
got out?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So people are still listening to the radio and watching TV,
Yeah,
obviously.
that's amazing. I'm amazed by that.
Any other questions? All right. The second thing on our agenda is the downtown TIF. We've talked a lot about the downtown TIF and the money that is in the downtown TIF and how we're going to be able to use those funds Mayor, would you like to talk a little bit about the kind of what we're thinking about doing or how we're trying to look at getting some funds available?
Yeah, with the downtown TIF, as we all know, I think it's 9 years or 10 years
9
until
years,
it expires. And so each year there'll be an increment. And what we're looking at is leveraging the future years of increment in present day dollars in hopes of a project comes along, we'd be able to fund that. And then in turn, the project would, be redeveloped. And so you would have TIF funds going back into the TIF as opposed to waiting till the end of the TIF when, funds would be available, and then you're running out of time and you're trying to spend down the funds. So it puts it to use on a early basis. But with that, I think it was put out for either a loan through the bank. Another option is a bond, a direct bond. Director McCarty's here. He could speak to those items. But the other one that's been has occurred previously under previous administrations is interfund borrowing as well. So it just depends on the costs associated with the type of borrowing and what makes the most sense from the economic standpoint of it. But it's a way to provide dollars today and have development happening as opposed to losing those opportunities, and that way you take advantage of those opportunities and generate activity within the TIF.
Okay. Director McCarty, do you have anything additional to add?
No, the mayor pretty much covered it. There are about 3 different options we're looking at to secure those funds.
Yeah.
No, the mayor pretty much covered it. We are in a position where we can leverage the future funds in order to borrow money today in order to do a project or projects, whatever the case may be. We've run the numbers, and we have put an RFP out for a commercial loan, which we just got in the other day. We're looking at that now. We got one response. I've already spoken with a large bank on potentially doing a private placement bond at around 1.9%. And then the last option the mayor talked about, I had mentioned to him last week, is we could also utilize current fund we have to borrow, interfund borrow, and pay back over time, and without hurting that particular fund. So that wouldn't have any cost. There'd be no cost of issuance. There'd be no cost of interest. You just pay it back over time with the cash flows that come in from the TIF fund. So 3 different options, but all of them lead to the same result, which is money now rather than in the future if you all deem that there's a project worthy of it.
Any questions? Sheila?
So, yeah, I don't know if this goes to Bill or the mayor. So you're leveraging it over the anticipated, is it the anticipated amount of the TIF over 10 years, or is it based on now?
No, it's based on the anticipated revenue coming in through 2029 would be the last year of revenue.
So how do we calculate that?
Well, we look at the increment and what we have. And so it's actually pretty straightforward. You just look at what you've got coming in, make a projection going forward, whether it's flat or going up or whatever. But even at flat, the money there's more than enough money there in order to pay back any loan. So, and we look at obligations. We look at what has to be turned back over per the agreement to the taxing districts, the $1.4 million a year. All of that is put into the calculation so that we're certain that we have the money there to pay back.
In that anticipation, do you have a growth calculation in there?
Not in the one. We ran it flat, and that's the good thing about it, is we ran it flat with what we anticipate this year, and there was more than enough money to cover the $7.5 million that the mayor was asking about. So if it goes into projects like he just talked about that generate more increment, then there's more money that can be spent on other projects down the road. So we would have more than the $7.5 million on top of that. The nice thing is just making sure that what we have now would pay it back, and it does.
So, and then the options, between the 3 options, how do those get decided and who decides that?
I will meet with the Mayor and Corporation Council, and we'll probably lay out for them the 3 options, and then they'll decide from a policy perspective whether or not do we want to borrow money from this fund and pay it back over time with 0% interest and no issuance, or do we want to go and do something more formal, whether it's a private placement bond or a commercial loan.
Okay, so that's at the executive level, that doesn't go back through city council?
Yes, eventually it'll have to come to council.
Okay, so
Yeah.
ultimately it comes to council?
Yeah, the mayor,
Okay.
so we'll talk to the mayor and corporation council, and we'll decide the best way we think we should do it, but then ultimately it'll have to come to council. If we're going to borrow that for interfund, we would have to come to council. If we're going to get a loan, it would have to come to council eventually.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? All right, thank you, Bill. Director McCarty, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry too. I called you Bill as well. I apologize.
Are there any questions from those of you who are on the Zoom?
No.
Val, you got a chat at the bottom.
Oh, sorry.
It's red, it says 1.
Okay, Tom Chi just asked any of the panelists and attendees if you have a question to raise your hand if you want to address the commission.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So Val, you mean raise our hand on the computer or raise our hand?
You're fine because you're in here. It's
Okay.
if you're
Oh, you mean on for them? Okay.
Yes,
I
yes,
gotcha.
yes. Was there someone that I heard, Dave, was that you, was asking a question? Or was it Nathan? Nathan, did you have a question?
I did not, no.
I did not, Val.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a project for us to review today, for us to listen to. We know it mostly as Bright New Day. The new name for this project is the Springfield Historic Commons. And today we have Tom Lee here to present to us on this TIF request. You should have the documentation that was sent ahead with you. So they all have this document, Mr. Lee. They all have this.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the project that we're very excited about. I do have extra handouts to the extent that anybody doesn't have it. But I will say that we're excited to be part of a project. We understand there's a history to it that has left bad taste in many people's mouths. We are committed to taking that bad taste out. We have made a significant commitment to the Springfield market. I don't know how many of you know, but the group has recently purchased 2 buildings in the downtown, or bought the notes for, similar to what we did here with the Bright New Day opportunity, with 2 of the iconic buildings, the Illinois building and the PNC building. So the reason I bring that up is simply to let everyone know that we do have a commitment to the area. We feel very strongly that Springfield is a great place to invest. It's a place that we're committed to, and the project itself has stalled, as you know, and we have been speaking to the unions. I just spoke to the union attorneys today at length. At least one of them, and the whole firm, the Kavanaugh firm, is representing 5, I believe, of the 7 unions. We are committed to making a payment back to those unions in full for every dollar they're out prior to us starting the project. We've hired a local architect to help us design the project. The significant differences in the project are we've decided to, the Ferguson building, which is the corner building, we've decided to put 21 units in that building. The original plan that was presented years ago had that as simply being built out as a vanilla commercial shell. We've met with various real estate professionals in the local market, and we've determined that the market can sustain extra units. It's not a tremendously big project. In total, we have 41 units that we're going to bring to market, and we're confident in all the discussions we've had that we can make it happen. We also have some retail downstairs. As you know, valet is active in one of the buildings now. We plan to put a gym in the basement of the Ferguson building, as both open to the public and as an amenity to the potential tenants. We have some rentals that we'd like to plan in the other basement area, just the storage, like a storage facility that'd be open to the public. Of course, we'd probably offer it to the residents first. The apartments are small, and so they may have some need to put bicycles and other things in that area. There's been some question about Rick Lawrence and his involvement. The group saw Rick's involvement at this point as sort of being critical. simply because he had all the relationships. He was part of the process from the start. And so at this point, he's been very cooperative in helping us bridge the gap with the unions to speak to those folks to come to a final solution. He's also assisted us in meeting with the various contractors because we're committed to try to use the same contractors on the project that started the project. We see that as making sense both for the community and our project. We have spoken to 4 of the 6 contractors that said, hey, we're happy to get going. Pay us what you're owed, and we're committed to paying them back too before we start the project of any monies that they're owed. We're still waiting on 2 more phone calls, but I can't see any reason why 2 other gentlemen wouldn't want to get paid back in full and continue on the project. That's sort of where we're at. We'd like to get started with. So going forward, Rick Lawrence will have no involvement in decision making, no involvement with day-to-day management, but we will keep him on in the consulting role until we feel that we have enough traction with those groups that in the situations that were created before we got involved to help us sort of bridge that gap. In terms of scheduling, the commercial markets, we have we have PACE funding lined up. I have comfort letters which I'll be able to provide to the board probably by midweek. I'm getting them in as we speak. We have the historic tax credit. I know Mr. Drennan, I understand, has been before the board before. He's been our consultant. I'm going to try to get him here for the meeting when it comes. But he's just given us what we call in the business a comfort letter, saying they're still committed to the project, new market tax credits, and the historic tax credit. And the PACE funding is out of a group out of Chicago that's been helping us. And they've sent me an updated term sheet as of this morning. I'd like to package that up so you'll know. And in terms of funding on the market, it's sort of chicken and egg. We need to know what we were doing with the TIF funds so we could know what to go out to the marketplace with. But we have been out to the commercial markets, and we're confident, given Chesterfield's 30-year history in the industry, that we will find the bridge financing we need to make this project a success. We'd like to start the project probably given the funding and the like, assuming everything goes well here with the board and then next week. We'd like to get the project started before the end of the year. And we believe that we can have the booth building, which is probably 60 to 80% complete. I've walked through it several times. We probably have that ready within a 12-month period. And then we'd probably take us a couple of months to get the second smaller building, Bateman Kennedy, through the approvals process. And that take about 12 months, 8 to 12 months to complete that. And the Ferguson, which is probably going to take the longest to design, probably a couple of 3 months, we'd get that project started. And the total time frame from when we start the project to when we finish would be about an 18-month period, although the earlier buildings would be done probably in 12 months, with the Ferguson being the most complex build and the most to do. Will probably take us about 18 months from the start date. And I estimate the start date end of the year, beginning of the first year, so end of December, beginning of January. So with that's our plan. In terms of who will be doing it, we're doing the development. My company's name is JCT Development. I've developed properties up and down the East Coast. I recently finished 600 market rent units in New Jersey. It's a $50 million budget. We developed that property on time and on budget for a national developer, DeBartolo. We were their construction management team. My company is currently building over 500,000 square feet of projects in New Jersey. We're doing some retail. We're doing some some storage facilities. And we're also in the process of repurposing a historical hospital that we purchased in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. That's about 500,000 square feet, which we're just about to get started on. My partner, Charles Everhart from Lockwood, he's out of Chicago. I know his resume is attached. He's done many large-scale projects. Our friends from Chesterfield have done projects with Charles before. And we're going to be working with Chesterfield to make sure that this project is a success, like many of the other projects we've worked on. So with that, if anyone has any questions or...
You might just address a little bit about how you mentioned there's a difference in the how many apartments and retail and that is. You might address that a little further and how the rents have changed, because that was a real concern initially going in?
Originally, the project, when it was originally presented, I believe in 2016, had 18 units and about 18,000 square feet of residential. The current plan has 41 units, so it's more than doubled, and the square footage is more than doubled, about 27,000 square feet. We've also increased the retail commercial space in that originally there was only in the retail a small amount of retail, and now we have over 18,000 feet we're going to use for commercial space. That's 3 storefronts. Valet is already active, and then the basements we're going to try to get those, generated or get those moving with the gym I discussed, and we plan on building the gym one way or another, as an amenity for the tenants. We hope that we can get some traction with the local community. So the biggest change is that we've taken the Ferguson building that was originally planned to be just vanilla retail or vanilla office. We've made the decision that we believe putting 21 market rent units in there is a benefit. And also, because we're seeking new market tax credits, the requirement that we put 20% of those units as affordable is done. So we'd have to provide 9 units, which we plan to do. So those are the major differences. We've converted the vanilla box office to residential. And we've also added 2 units in the Bateman Kennedy building, which originally only had 2 units. We're now putting 4.
Hey, commissioners, your questions.
Well, I have a lot of questions, so I don't want to monopolize the whole thing. Does anybody else have? Because I have a whole list of questions.
I have some too, but go ahead, and then because I'm sure some of them are the same.
You can stop me if I go to. So, and I want to apologize in advance that I kind of wrote these down as I thought of them, so they may not be in. So don't sit down, but I may go to Val, or they may kind of jump back and forth. And first of all, I just want to say that this is a really important project for Springfield, and I appreciate you guys stepping up to the plate and the hard work that's obviously been done in this. But I think, just given the history of this project, I hope you'd understand that there's going to be some questions, especially when we're using public funding. And you kind of answered my first question, was what was the role the previous owner has played in this project, and you said that, so I understand that he's being used just sort of in advisory capacity. Will he in any way benefit indirectly or directly from this project?
I believe he will benefit directly. We hold the mortgages, and we have the right to foreclose on those mortgages if we wanted to. We've made a decision not to, and I know that he has some personal money's tied up in those foreclosures. I think his own home is part of the package that we bought, and we don't plan on exercising that on him if the project goes forward. So I think that would be a significant benefit to him.
Okay.
I've met Rick many times. He's been cooperative and helpful in many ways. I don't know, he got himself here, and we've taken a project that we've called in the business. It's got a lot of fuzz on it, and we've worked through, and I believe we have a clear path to taking that fuzz off. Not looking to hurt Rick Lawrence. We're just trying to build a successful project, and we see him at this current moment being in an advisory role, being a benefit to our group. But he has no ownership interest.
Okay.
We don't have any money we plan to give him. I mean, if at the end, if there's money to be made and we want to give him some money, it's something we may consider. I don't know. It's nothing we've discussed, but we're not out to hurt Rick. We're not out to hurt the unions. We're out to try to help everyone.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So how is the conversation been with the unions? That she said, I understand you're not here to hurt Rick, but he left maybe not a good taste.
I'll be as clear as I can be. The union will be paid back every dollar they're owed. They deserve to be paid for the work they've done. And every one of the members that have worked on that project deserves to get every penny of the monies they're owed. And we're committed, before we even get started, to make that happen.
So you said, I think I heard you say in your introduction that you have been in talks with them?
We have been in talks with them, and frankly, I mean, it should be a pretty easy talk, right? We're going to pay everything we owe you. I mean, the discussion shouldn't be very difficult. That's the same discussion we've had with the subcontractors. You're going to get paid everything you owed. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that.
Keisha, I think you might be muted.
No, it's,
Oh, it was on
Oh,
red
I'm sorry.
before when you were talking.
Is there, I guess, back with Rick, is there a general contractor, or are you running the general, or
We may develop it ourselves, but we're thinking of hiring a local qualified subcontractor or just a project super and a local project manager. We may hire a company. We've used historical numbers. We've looked at the budget 8 different ways. We've looked at Rick's numbers, the numbers he already has negotiated to finish the job, which sub's already willing to do that. So that sort of makes it a little interesting to us. We already have the subcontractors that started the job, that know the job, that are willing to complete the job. And as such, that probably would, at this current moment, if I had to make a decision today, it would be we would hire a local project manager and the super, and I would be here at least once a month for the meetings. But if I needed to be here every week, if I needed to set up here if there was a problem, that's what I would do. We're committed to making this project work, and we're committed to put as much time in as we need to. But given the fact that it's the same subcontractor base with the same set of plans, it probably wouldn't make sense hiring a local subcontractor and absorbing those extra costs that would be required.
Well, I guess going back to their questions, I think I'm hearing you say Rick won't be your person running that job then.
Rick will not be the person running that job.
I think, Mark, though, piggybacking off of you, I think that's like you said, if you had to make a decision today, that you would consider hiring somebody local as a general, because I think that's where we ran into a mistake before, accountability. So we want to have checks and balances. Like you said, if you had to come here every week, you would.
Truth be told, the buck stops here. We'll have accountability with Chesterfield Fairing and JCD Development. Mm-hmm. I'll be the person responsible, and if I'm not comfortable with the team in place, I'll be here.
Okay.
I've done that in a job in New Jersey. I lived in Florida at the time. Didn't have the right job. I flew up there, spent 4 days a week in New Jersey, and 3 days a week in Florida, and I did that for 4 years. I flew back and forth.
Okay.
And I'm committed, to the extent there are any hiccups on this project, to make the same commitment to the city of Springfield as I know they're making a commitment to us. If I need to sit here every day in that trailer, that's what I'll do.
So, would anybody else, do you think? You know, it's a little confusing to me. I'm not a business person. I'm not someone who is involved in real estate or business development. So if you could just help me out a little bit here. It starts out with Bright New Day, and then we talk about Springfield SPM, which is owned by CFL, and then you guys, and then JCT Development and Lockwood Development, right? Is that how it kind of goes?
So Chesterfield's a parent company. Their company, Springfield PM, purchased a loan from the bank. So
the 2.1.
Right, so they own the note.
They own the building now.
They own the note to the building. Now, to physically have fee simple ownership, they would have to foreclose out Rick. They would foreclose out, in theory, the unions, and would foreclose out anybody else that had a legal claim to the property. And so what will happen is, before we do the development, we're going to form a single purpose entity, which should be formed this week, and we'll provide those documents to the members of the board or the commission. And I think the going rate name of the place is Monroe Development Properties, probably. And that company will take ownership of the property, and they'll be the developers of record. And the developers will be Chesterfield, will be the parent company, and my company, JCT Development, will be responsible for building the project to completion. And Chesterfield will secure the financing and the funding, as we've discussed, to get the property completed, as you can see in our sources and uses. So Chesterfield brings the money, we bring the expertise to build it. It's as simple as I can try to make it.
And then at the end of the day, Monroe Development owns it?
Monroe Development would own the property, yes.
At the end of the day. But
yes.
You're part of Monroe Development, and CFL is part of, you're going to,
yes.
It's all going to be.
Yes.
So you guys together are all,
Right, so Springfield, JCD, Lockwood would all have a percentage ownership interest, with, of course, the people with the money having the bigger part of that. So Chesterfield would have the biggest part of that.
So what kind of guarantees are there in this along the way to, either personal, who's got skin in the game here? That right now it looks like there's a lot of loans being kind of
Chesterfield
going
has-
back and forth. Is there any personal individual money that is going to be put into this other than public funding and loans?
There's been 2.1 million put in it to buy the note, so there's some real skin in the game.
But that was secured by a mortgage, right?
That was secured by Chesterfield that put up the money. So it's their money they put up.
Okay, so
So
they're
they-
on the hook for that.
They have skin in the game. That's $2 million worth of skin.
Yeah. Okay. This is a TIF question I have. I think I saw in the ordinance that went for first reading that the TIF funds are contingent upon successful completion of the project. Is that right? So, but how does that actually work? I mean, in terms of the phases of the project, do we not put in TIF money till the very end?
That's my understanding. Mr.
Just to answer that question, you may recall that with the YMCA, the new building, the primary portion of that TIF is after construction is completed. That puts the risks on the developer. That's the same circumstance in this instance. The question about skin in the game, the ultimate skin in the game is to complete the project. So the city's obligation to allow the TIF funds to be distributed are subject to at the end when the project is done.
So it won't go out in phases?
No, because
It'll just be at the
it's
end.
proven a little bit impractical, and in a way, it's more predictable for the developer, and it's also more predictable for the city.
So then my other question is if the scope would for some reason change, if the scope of the project would change, you get into it and for whatever reason you can't do 44 units, but you can only do 30 units or whatever. How does that work with the TIF funding then? If the scope of the project changes, does that have to come back through to be
Yes.
approved for the TIF funds?
Yes.
Okay. And I just wanted to, I think you answered most of these in your comments that I have written here. The occupancy rate, you've got a 90 to 95% occupancy rate on the first year. Again, this isn't my business. I don't know how this worked. That just seems kind of ambitious.
We're optimistic folks. You have to be a developer.
But what happens if that doesn't happen? I guess that's my question about the scope changing. Like, so if you don't get 95% occupancy rate in the first year, and does that occupancy rate also include the gym and the basement? And
That was residential, if you saw.
this is just for the residential.
Right, so if we don't get it, we're going to have to, it's going to take longer to stabilize. I mean, we understand that. We do this for a living, so it's going to be, hopefully we'll get enough occupancy that we're not going to be going negative. But we wouldn't be asking the city for any money. At that time, the project would be completed. And so it'd be our problem, not yours.
Okay. But you'd already have the money from the TIF, right? Because it would be completed.
Right, but you'll have 3 beautiful completed buildings in downtown also.
Yeah. Okay. And if for some reason the project were to not be successful, what is the order of payback that generally happens in these cases? So clearly the unions were last, I guess, in the last go-round. How does the city, how does that work?
I don't understand your question.
Well, okay, the city, we wouldn't be giving you the money until the project is done. So that it wouldn't, but like what's the order of payback? The bank, the loan,
Well, the unions, it is my understanding, and Tom can address this, but that's a condition prerequisite to being able to be eligible to receive any TIF funds, is that the prior bills, vendors, et cetera, are all taken care of. So that's going to have to be basically during the project at the front end, agreements made or however those are going to be done. But that is a condition precedent. Without proof of payment, then there would be no TIF money.
So did we have TIF money in the last go-round with this building? Wasn't there TIF money that went into that?
The prior project, yes.
So was the deal different then? Because we had $1.2 million that didn't get paid to the unions, so.
Well, that was money that, and again, I think Mr. Lawrence actually talked about that pretty extensively at the city council meeting. The funds that went unpaid, what ended up happening was the underlying bank, a Quincy bank, and I won't, it was talked about, extensively at the council meeting in this chamber, ended up pulling funding at a certain point, as did the city, stop paying because of a change in the scope that was not signed off on. The unpaid funds happened after that because Mr. Lawrence continued to work. There were no obligations prior to that time. When Mr. Lawrence continued to, and again, he'd addressed that right in this council chamber, he said he had always hoped that there would be an agreement that would allow him to pay those bills. But the unpaid amounts came after the cutoff because he kept people working.
So how much TIF money has already been into these buildings?
I believe it's like $975.
$975,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be a total of, with this request, it would be almost like $4 million.
And to give, again, just a little perspective, the Quincy Bank had put in about $4 million at the point the city had done $975. So the original agreement with the original project had the city via TIF funds at somewhere around 3.9 million. So effectively what's happening is instead of that $3 million that wasn't spent originally, approximately, and I think you have an exhibit, or maybe it was OPED that put that together, that showed the comparison of the projects. And the original scope of the project did not finish the corner building. It did not finish the corner building. What ends up happening is that in this case, what the plan, if you've had a chance to look at the plan or compare it to the prior one, it eliminates the middle building, the elevator
Infill building.
the infill building. So instead of spending the money on the infill, the money is being spent to finish that corner building. So in effect, the decision, I think their proposal has been, don't use that money to do the infill, but rather finish and complete the other building. Under the original plan, the other building was not complete. It was vanilla boxed, I think, was what the explanation was, but it wasn't completed for occupancy. So this completes all the buildings. It just excludes the middle, I can't remember, you're calling it the infill building. I remember the picture of it. It's a building that was in between, in the alley, between the buildings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then finally, the project cost, I believe that I read that the project cost is going to be $15.5 million, but the value will only be 7.7. Why is that? I don't. Again, from somebody's a newbie, it doesn't make sense to me that you'd put $15 million into a project to have a value of 7 or 8 coming out of it.
The historical tax funds, the PACE funding, it allows a lot of great benefits, and that's why projects like this in areas that are having issues can get done. If it wasn't for the TIF, if it wasn't for PACE funding, if it wasn't for those, buildings would never get built because, as you rightly point out, who would spend $15 million for something that's worth 7? Nobody would do it, and that's why developers in these areas are always trying to figure out ways to get it done through historic tax credit, other vehicles that make it make sense. So
minus, and again, I forgot this, I know it's in there, minus the public funding, how much is then the rest of it?
Well, we have $2.1 million invested out of pocket from Chesterfield, and there's an equity component that we'd have to put in of another $1 million, perhaps $1.8 million, depending on where things go. So there's real skin in the game.
So out of 15.5, you guys have 3 point something,
right.
And the rest
About
is
20%.
all is all public funding, essentially,
Yes.
Publicly financed type funding.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's my questions.
PACE loan, I'm not familiar with that. What is a PACE loan? Is that a loan you actually repay, or is it a forgivable type thing, or help me understand that?
Yeah, PACE funding is, they lend on certain components of the building. I can send along to you a more detailed explanation of how PACE funding works, and I'm happy within a couple of days I'll be able to send you the term sheet. In fact, I have the updated term sheet that I can email to the group afterwards, which explains it in depth.
But it is a loan that is repaid. It's not some sort of
It's repaid over time through the project, yes.
Okay, gotcha. And then I think you said you don't have the bank financing lined up yet because part of it is wanting to present the TIF when you go do that?
Right. I mean, as was pointed out earlier, you can't go out and get money unless you know what your capital stack looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to understand the TIF. I mean, it hasn't been approved. If it doesn't get approved, then we have a whole different critter to deal with. If it does, then the other pieces will fall into place because they're all saying, hey, once we know what you got on the TIF, then we know what to fill in, then we know what the difference is that we'll have to go out to the markets.
Okay.
But we've had discussions with people, and it's a crazy time now to borrow money, but the markets have been opening up, and we've had some good discussions and people that are interested.
Okay. How, if cost overruns, that kind of stuff, help me understand that. Is it, who would fund that? I assume it would come from some of the owners.
It depends the deal we make with the bank, but most banks will make you put up the money, but some banks, depending on where the project's at, will agree to lend some more money. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, generally speaking, if you spend more money than you tell the bank, you got to write the check.
And then the people writing those checks would be your company, or
it would be the Chesterfield.
Chesterfield.
Group. Yep.
Okay.
So, Mark, how much your JCT?
JCT, yes, ma'am.
How much of this are you guys doing? Then, if Chester, if they're doing majority of that portion, or are all three of you guys connected?
They are going to be responsible for. Our agreement has them responsible for bringing the financing to the project.
Okay.
Our part of the deal is making sure it gets built properly. That's where our expertise is. They're experts in finding the money. We're experts in building stuff.
Okay.
And I have one last question too. At the very end of your proposal, I think it listed the fees or I forget what they were called. It wasn't at the very end. I think it was in the middle. Let me see. The developer's fee, the construction management fee, this GC fee. Can you tell me who do those go to?
Okay, the developer's fee is, by the way, all of these are standard industry fees, and they're all at the standard industry rate.
So it's just like a formula?
I'm sorry?
It's like a formula that's
Yeah,
put in there?
it's generally a percentage.
So who's the developer that gets the fee?
The developer would be the entity that's going to be formed, and that's the one that's going to be owned by Chesterfield is the parent company.
That's the Monroe?
Yes, the Monroe Group. So Monroe will be made up of the Chesterfield Group, JCT, and Lockwood.
Okay.
So the developer's fee would be shared in proportion by those three entities. And then the GC fee is left in for whoever's going to build it. So if we're going to build it, we get that fee. If we hire a local general contractor, then they'll get that fee.
Okay. I didn't know what GC stood for. And then construction management fee,
Right. So
that's, again, whoever you end up using?
Right.
Okay.
So, Sheila, is that a lot of what ifs? Like, do you come back to us and tell us, like, concrete at some point in time?
Concrete as to the ownership, by before the next meeting, we will have a company formed, and we'll set forth those people, and it's going to be the people I've discussed. Right, the Springfield PM, it's owned by Chesterfield, and JCT, and I'm happy to put out what our percentage of interest is. I mean, it's okay with me.
When does this go to City Council? Is it Tuesday?
It goes tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Committee of the Whole tomorrow.
For Committee of the Whole?
Right, and then it goes to council then the following Tuesday.
Okay, so you probably won't have that information by tomorrow when it goes to the City Council?
I mean, I can put together what it's going to be because we're forming the company. So, whether we get the company name we want because it may be taken, I doubt Monroe Properties is going to be taken, but the instruction as of our partner's call on Thursday was get the lawyers to get it done. We're getting traction and we have to have it. But we're happy to put forth in writing what it's going to be. The name may change, but the entities won't and the percentages won't. So I can get that to you later today or early tomorrow.
Well, it wouldn't come to us, it would go to, if, you know, it's
Right.
going to go in front of city council. So you're going to get a lot more questions out of city council, I can assure you, than you're getting even from us. So, yeah, I would be
Well, I
as
hope that's not tomorrow. I
prepared.
was told it was next Tuesday.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
It's committee as a whole.
Committee of the whole is, will he,
It'll be city council call.
will they present to committee of the whole or no?
You'll be on Zoom tomorrow night?
Yes.
Yeah, Tom Lee will join by Zoom tomorrow night, and then we'll be in person at City Council next Tuesday, a week from Tuesday.
Okay.
And Sheila, I wanted to make sure we have both understood when you had talked about that gap. Say the project is 15 million, but then she asked how much would you be putting in? You said around 3, right?
Right.
I wanted to have Mark to elaborate for us to understand more, because I wasn't really understanding you. You said something about public funding coming in, but Mark, how does that work?
I think I followed it, but, I mean, so basically 15.5, right? So as you just go, if I'm looking at page 3 of their sources and uses, you know, that's probably the key page to look at. And so if you just look at the top, bridge loan, 5.8, so that'll be a bank, you know, of whoever they get. The PACE loan, it sounds like, again, I'm not familiar with it, but it's another type of loan that you get through some entity, sound like some Chicago group or something. And so they'll have to pay that back as well, from what my understanding. The next two are tax increment funding and then historic tax credits. So that'll probably be really some sort of an investor outside of this group that will put money into the project, and they're basically buying future tax credits. So it's a source of funding that won't come from them, won't come from a bank, but it also won't come from the city. And it's something relatively common in projects like this. And then, so then we're down to the equity, which is the 1.9. And then I think he's also alluding that there's more equity in because they've already put in the $1 million to buy the loan. But I don't know how to reconcile the 1.9 versus the 3. But anyway, that's how it works. And I mean, that all I would say is relatively standard. But I guess that's, maybe you can reconcile for us the 1.9 versus the 3 you were talking about. But
Well, we've already put in 2.1
okay.
or about, so we may have to put that extra amount in. Whatever the difference is, we have to make up.
Okay.
So it's not just that the current lender or whoever owns this now is taking less for it. I mean, I just sort of assumed it said it was 3. You bought it for 2.1, right?
Right.
So they just take a loss, then they've taken a loss to get it off their books?
The bank has, in theory, taken a loss to get it off their books.
Okay.
The original bank.
The original bank, yeah.
Yeah, so the original bank is now out of the picture.
Yes, sir.
Totally. And so now it's just the parties that we've talked about.
So one last thing, I know I've said that 3 times, but all these numbers and all this, I mean, this can all, the bottom line is it comes down to the feasibility of really will people rent these units, right? And did you go, in terms of a market analysis, did you look primarily at the Bowen study that was done for the city 7 years ago, or did you do your own kind of market analysis?
We met with the local group that owns, and I forget the large property. We met their property manager. I have the information. They gave us a market study based on what they thought the absorption rates would be. They gave us a market study what they believe the rents are. And then we got another group to confirm that and discuss it. And they were pretty close in terms of what they believe the market rents would be. And also what the absorption rates, what the absorption rate would be. And we relied upon local folks. And we also called in another local group. And I have all those listed that came in and gave us an informal meeting and also discussed what we had discussed with the other 2 groups. And based on those 3 entities, we decided that it was the best play to make the Ferguson building all rentals. And frankly, in terms of an absorption, it's 41 units. I know there's a lot of hospital stuff coming on. I think that, you know, a brand new product in downtown, vibrancy, we're not so concerned. It's 41 units. It's not like it's 200.
Mm-hmm.
In my gut, just from, I looked at the number, I'm a banker, and so I finance projects like this from time to time. I looked at those numbers and I thought that from my perspective, they looked reasonable from a rental numbers. Some of them might be an ounce high, but I think at the same time, it's a different product, than what you're looking at in some of the other apartment units in town. So there might be some draw to it. So I thought the residential numbers looked reasonable. I'm not saying they're accurate, but they're not outlandish wrong. I'd also say in Springfield, especially for new product, there is a demand, and so I don't think the 5% vacancy that they projected is wrong, because I'm finding that they're filling up quickly in Springfield. The first floor stuff, that's a harder one. I think the rental numbers they've used were reasonable. The vacancy of 10 is, we all know Springfield. I don't know, is that right or wrong? I don't know the answer to that, but I would say the numbers they used for the rental looked reasonable to me. The vacancy is a matter of, I think we all can use our own judgment there, whether we think that you could use 10, you could use 30, I don't know, on the percentage of vacancy. Who knows with that space. So that's probably the only one I saw where it could be a little bit of a crapshoot, but the apartments, I think, to me, look pretty reasonable.
Mark, do you have any other questions before I go to some of our commissioners who are remote?
Yeah, I did. And now I forgot what it was, but hold on just a second. Oh, just from a cash flow perspective, and really this is less about getting it built, but more, I think one of the things that, we're investing too, I guess, to some degree, and so we're hoping that this thing is an ongoing viable project. And I guess it all depends on the terms of the loans, obviously, what the cash flow looks like. But when I started lumping in, first mortgage loan, and then I don't know what the terms of the PACE loan would be, but PACE loan repayment plus the repayment of this SPM, it looked like that cash flow would be a little bit tight, but I don't know those answers. You clearly run them and we're comfortable, so I'd just like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, the CPACE fund, like I said, I'll have the whole book to you guys, hopefully by tomorrow, with the updated term sheets, very low interest over a period of time. The rents, as you indicated, we believe we're right. Retail is what it is. We're a little, we already have valet rented. We think we'll find. We've been speaking to some folks, or at least Rick he transferred the number to me. With the COVID, I don't know where that's going to go, but we are comfortable, given 41 units and what we believe the rents will be, that this will be an effective cash flow for us.
Okay.
Karen Kahn, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're just fine. Do you have any questions?
I do, and nobody, I think, on this meeting wants to see this project completed probably more than I do. I think that this has been an eyesore in downtown, and it's very important to have this type of development for downtown to help with the vibrancy of it. But that being said, I just need some clarification to make sure that I can completely wrap my head around some of these numbers, because as I look at the sources and uses and then I read the executive summary, I'm having a hard time fully understanding where money's coming from, what the costs are, what net costs are, and how much TIF request in relation to a percentage of the project it is. And so if Mr. Lee could give me some more clarification of, we say a total building development cost is the $12.6 million, which includes the 1.2 in back dues owed to the unions, minus the equity that the owners, and then government tax credits of 7.675, which then gives us a net cost of construction of 2.95. Is that 10.9 also include the mortgage? And if that net cost is more than the TIF request, explain that to me. And then when you take that net cost and you look at your value upon completion, and then you have a total equity of 4.7, but you had all of this money from tax increment, historic tax credits, and new market credits, it just seems like there could be more skin in the game.
The best way I could explain it to you in terms of trying to explain the capital stack would be on page 3, which has our sources and uses. And so to answer one of the questions was, what is it going to cost? The hard cost construction would be the $10,950. That would be to take us from where we're at today to the finish line. The acquisition cost, as you can see, is 1.6. The union settlement, and that's not only the union settlement, that would also be the settlement to the companies themselves. So to break it down, it's about $600,000 give or take to the union, and about $600,000 give or take to the companies. And then our fees are there, and then the interest reserve, which any bank's going to require us to have on the side. And so the sources and uses tells the story of where we're getting the money from, and the percentage of the TIF money on a $15 million project, it would be about 20% of it.
I guess I just look at the executive summary. When you go down and actually read the loan request, the history, and so forth, that's where it gets a little confusing and muddy for me, because these numbers, they don't quite all add up. But we're, like, example, what is the 7.675 net government financing and tax credits? Where is that in the sources and use?
That would be the addition of the tax incremental funding, the historic tax credit, the new market tax credit, and the PACE loan. The first, or not the bridge loan, the next four items in the sources and uses. Once again, PACE loan, tax incremental funding, historic tax credits, and the new market tax credit.
I'm not the quickest kid on the block, so I'll just use my calculator here just to make sure I can. Got it. So the PACE loan is a government funding, so it's going to be, it is a payable loan though.
Yes. It gets paid back.
Yes.
If I may, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think this was the program we're looking at where the improvements are made on the property, and then the savings through the utilities helps pay that loan back.
Yes.
Anything else, Karen?
Not yet.
Okay. Nate, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Can you guys hear me okay?
Sure.
Okay. Several issues here. Just plagiarizing a little bit of the SJR today in regards to what the city has actually paid out in TIF funds. $975,615.42 we have paid out in public monies to this project, and nothing has yet happened with it. I mean, I understand the intent of the developer and what they're trying to achieve here, and I understand them reaching out to the unions to make them whole on their benefits. But that is a very large sum of money that it seems nobody knows where it went to as of current date. And we definitely know the unions have not been made whole with any of those monies out of that fund. There's a lot sitting there. There's a lot of history you guys are going to be involved in regards to the new developers, and I understand that. But where I get my heartburn from, and what I have to face the men and women I do my business with, is health and welfare money's not paid into these funds properly. And now we're talking about using TIF funds to make sure these health and welfare and pension funds are made whole for those monies owed. I mean, you can understand, and Commissioner Stock-Smith was probably being very light in her comment that the City Council is going to have a lot of questions, and a lot more than we have. We're just trying to, as commissioners on the TIF, to make sure these monies are being spent for what they were intended for. That is my heartburn with it. I can tell you, I'm not going to vote for it right now because I don't have enough information in front of me to convince me, because I'm looking at 3 years of plus history. and looking at a lot of comments online in regards to this project. Of course, we don't want to turn anything away. We want it, and we need it. But those are my concerns.
And I guess I can give you an apology for the last guy. You know,
No, actually, Abby Powell can give the update. I mean, those are reimbursable expenses, so if you want to run through those reimbursements of the $975,000.
Do you have that in front of you, Abby?
I don't have the specifics in front of me, but I do have a pretty detailed spreadsheet for every time there was a request made and payment backed up for each of those requests. So those were signed off by each of the subcontractors, the general, the architect, and line itemed out. I believe what Mr. Zirkle noted before was that we reimbursed only for TIF eligible costs for those nearly $1 million of TIF funds shown, which is why one of the buildings is nearly complete. And that after we stopped payment of any TIF and the bank stopped paying on that project, Mr. Lawrence continued working, and that's where the unpaid bills came in. Those happened all after the TIF money was involved.
Well, I think Doris Turner has her hand.
Yeah, I'll get to it.
So can I just ask a question? How much has been spent total on this building now? I mean, so it's including the TIF and, I mean, that is there, so there's value in it now, right? Because we've already spent a lot of money on fixing it up to the point that it's at. And then it's going to cost another $15.5 million to bring it to completion.
right, hard cost of 10.9, but yes, the total package is 15.
So, and plus how much, like, let's say it was, I mean, how much has been put into it? Let's say it was vacant, or I mean, it was completely unfinished now. It would have cost you what?
It's so tough to say in a historic rehab. I can tell you I've walked through the building, and the demo's been done in all three, and I will tell you that there's been significant framing. All the walls are framed. There's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, insulation. I mean, the next thing is to just make sure all of those key components are in a working order before you close in the drywall and then finishes. So that building, I mean, you could get, it's so subjective. I can get one bank appraiser, the bank will tell you, they'll walk in with their bank guy. Some would call it 60%, some would call it 80%. I'd call it pretty close to the 80%. But once again, doing a project like this is like peeling an onion. The more you peel, the more you cry. And I understand, Mr. Proctor's point. The only thing I can say is we've got a significant commitment to the area. The unions will be paid back before we put a shovel in the ground. The subcontractors will be paid back. And hopefully all the agita you felt will go away quickly. And the pressure that I'm sure the commission's feeling, everyone here is feeling, will go away once we pay those folks back. And I can't fix what happened in the past. I can only try to make it better from this point forward. That's all I can do.
Val,
Nate Fretz, do you have any questions?
So I do have a question. So has there been any assessment done on that building as far as the value in the interim?
No, as far as I know, I don't think there's been like an appraisal or anything like that. I know the original bank had architects go through to assess, to try to determine actually what was just being discussed is what's the percentage of completion, what work had actually been done. And so I do know that they had gone through and done a pretty extensive review of the work paid for and claimed. And to clarify a couple of things, the city knows exactly where the 975 went. That's what Val and Abby were talking about, that there's very detailed records of what the reimbursements were. And then going forward, the agreement with the developer, no TIF funds can be used for acquisition or to pay old bills. So the way that the numbers were arrived at is typically we've done 30 or 33% of actual costs. So the formula was where the $3.15 million came from was basically 30% of the $10,700,000. So it's for hard costs only. It cannot be used for acquisition. It cannot be used to pay old bills, and that's been the discussion, from the very get-go. It's only for hard costs. If that maybe helps a little bit.
You know,
Sandy Hamilton, are you on the call? Okay, are there any other questions from the commissioners before I take it out to public comment?
I just have one thing.
Yes.
The student housing project, is that the last housing project we did essentially in Springfield? So I don't know really, how has that, is that 100% occupied? Is that, no?
It is not.
What is it?
I don't know, Abby, do you recall? I think the last time we
So
saw
the
this.
student housing project wasn't a TIF project ultimately, and we don't keep track of those occupancy numbers, but we have had other housing projects completed. The church renovation, Center at 501 is a residential component. I believe they're pretty near full up.
Are those comparable rents and size of units?
They have some affordable mix in there. I don't know about the size. They're all since it was a rehab of a church, the sizes are all kind of wackadoodle. Let's see, the St. George building, those were only 9 units, but that's relatively recent in terms of residential units that were supported with TIF. Those are pretty large, nice new apartments, and I would say that those rents are on track with what Mr. Lee has presented.
Because my only observation seemed to be that, and again, I haven't been in the rental market for a long time, but they seem small. The square footage seems small to me. But so is it pretty much the 1 bedroom, 1 bath? It's pretty much targeted to one person, like a work, like almost like workforce housing in some ways.
The Booth building does have 5 2-bedrooms.
Yes.
So there are a couple of larger units.
Yeah.
Once again,
But you've got a couple that are just like 800 and some square feet, and you've got some that are 900 and some square feet.
we spoke to the experts, and we asked them what they believe the proper unit mix is in unit size.
And that's what you were
Yes,
told by.
so we didn't pick numbers out. We go to the experts, and we went to, like I said, 3 separate consultants, and all very consistent in what they thought was appropriate. So that's how we determined that. We didn't just pick strange numbers.
And did they think that was appropriate based on an analysis of Springfield's market?
Yes.
Or just general?
No, absolutely.
No. Okay.
They all did it on the Springfield market.
Okay, great, thank you.
Val, this is Karen.
Okay, yes.
Just a couple additional questions. So this TIF request is going to be contingent on whether or not the central area TIF can either loan or bond out for additional monies. Is that correct?
Correct.
Going to be contingent upon that.
Yes.
And then my next question is that there's not going to be any TIF reimbursements until this project's 100% done, not one dime.
That's the understanding that we have, yes.
That's correct, Council.
Yes.
So we would be assured that this project would be 100% complete before the city would have any TIF financing into it.
That is correct.
Okay. And then my last question is, even if we added in the roughly $1 million that the city has given in TIF funding to this project in prior years, if you add that $1 million to this current request for the 3.1, we're still at a 27% funding of the entire project, of the 15 million.
We'll trust your math on that.
So it all falls in line with everything that we have done in the past and our track record of following the guidelines, that it's reimbursement, it has to qualify, it falls within that 30% funding gap. And we've had extra caveats put into this that there'll be no funding until it's 100% complete to assure that the project's done. So in the end, even if this developer doesn't meet the expectations of their occupancy or their rent, we still have 3 completed buildings in downtown that have improved the property tax value of what it currently sits at today.
Yes.
Okay? That answers my questions. Thank you.
You took
I have
me
a
a while to
quick
follow
question.
everything.
Just so I understand, I may have missed it in your executive summary here, what would be the estimated time of completion should everything be a go?
We have 3 different buildings, so we would get started on the booth immediately, and we believe we could have that completed in a year from the day we start. We hope to start at the end of, sometime in December or January, the latest. The second building, which is the smallest, was the Bateman Kennedy. The permitting on that, we still have to, submit plans, but it's only 4 units. So assuming that takes a couple of 3 months, that would take another 8-9 months to complete, so a year after that start date. And then Ferguson, which is the most complex, would probably take about 18 months from December or January when we start to be finally completed, because those plans may take 4 or 5 months. The build will probably take 12, 13 months.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one additional question, if I may.
Sure.
Are any of the past bills that are owed, the 1.2 million, are any of those bills eligible for TIF reimbursement if this were granted?
Well, the answer would be no. The business discussion that's taken place with the developer is no TIF money, no of the new money could be used to pay the old bills.
Okay, so then any of the past bills that are owed, the 1.2 million, this in essence has to come out of the pockets of the developer. So there's no city funding by way of TIF that will make those payments.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask one thing? So back to the beginning when Director McCarty was up. So the whole project is really contingent on that we can get a loan for TIF for the future, for the future of the TIF, right? So where is that? Where is that process at?
Well, the only thing I would like to add to that a little bit is remember that the TIF payments are paid over the entire life of the TIF. So this is not a lump sum payment. It's not clear to me that there won't be funds in 2022. We need to go and finish looking at that, because the initial payment would be approximately 1/10 of that, or 1/8 of that, or 1/9, so $350,000. So this is paid over the life of the TIF annually. So that's very advantageous to the city from a financing point of view, because it actually allows some of the increment to help offset those future distributions. So it is not a lump sum payment, but rather paid over a period of years.
And we've looked at that in terms of the projected, I don't know if I'd say deficit, if that's the correct term, that we're going to be with the retail situation that we have in the sales tax, et cetera. So is that part of the whole projection going forward, given? Yeah,
the cash flow that Bill was talking about earlier takes into account the history up until now, and there has been a reduction in the TIF increment over the last few years, but most certainly in the last year or two. And so the cash flows, future value, right, is relatively, I think Bill mentioned this, relatively easy to project, and we're well within the numbers relative to the cost of this project, relative to the full amount of the cash that's available over the life of the TIF.
But that's based on business as it is right now, right? Or based on before COVID, after COVID? I guess that's what I'm trying to get, is what impact has COVID had on our projections of, how is that going to impact the life of the TIF?
I don't think that COVID is going to impact real estate taxes. I mean, we're talking about the value of buildings, so that's hard to predict. Okay. And so it's not a sales tax. Remember, it's a real estate tax.
It's real estate.
And I think what you're going to end up finding out is on the real estate tax side, the collections are going to be pretty normal.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But again, these are things that have to be, looked at in the sense of the cash flow. But keep in mind, the structure of this is, and I'll use a word, I think very advantageous to the city relative to trying to get the buildings completed in a rational manner with as least amount of risk, but yet still being responsible to assist getting the projects done. Because what was talked about earlier, just in general, is that absent the tax credits, absent TIF, absent some of the these kind of things, you will never get a historic building redone because you can build cheaper, you might go to a different location. I think the banks are fully aware of that. And so to take an older building and try to adaptively reuse it is probably the most difficult and challenging project that there is. And the most skeptical on the part of the private banks. And so that's why the reason for having the public funds plug in, because it's, is it fair to say risky? I mean, you never know as you work through it, and you've just got to, you take your chances, and it takes a certain skill level, to do that.
Okay, Tom Chi, I think we have some questions from the waiting room. If you could let those people in, please. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought someone was coming to the lectern. I was trying to figure that out. I wasn't trying to run out.
They're virtual.
Oh, they're virtual,
Yeah.
okay.
Tom, have we got any questions?
Doris is on mute.
Yep, I have let Doris turn her in.
Okay, thank you.
Still on mute, Doris. I'm trying to read your lips, but I still don't know what you're saying.
Want to tell her she's on mute, please?
Doris, you're muted. Have you?
She's saying she's not on mute, but she's not able we're not able to hear her just yet.
Okay.
I told you I'm reading her lips.
Tom, is there anything you can help us with?
Now she's on mute. I see her microphone.
Yeah.
How's that? Try it again.
No.
No.
I can hear her.
Oh, well, then you can translate.
That's the question.
Who can hear? Oh, Tom can?
Tom can, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and ask the question. So I can reiterate it. You don't hear it.
Yep, go ahead.
Long question.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's gonna be hard to turn over.
Hey, Doris, will you, I'm trying to type that in here. Will you repeat that?
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, so the question from Doris was, are the pension benefits in arrears going to be paid?
As indicated earlier, they will be paid prior to us putting a shovel on the ground. We plan on paying every penny that's owed to anybody that did work on that project, both union benefits and subcontractors.
Second question by Doris was, when do you anticipate making a decision on the general contractor?
We will make that decision in the next month or so. Once again, there's a lot of things that had to come into place, the financing, but I think we're competent and capable of building it ourselves. That's been my push, but if not, we will hire a local, competent, qualified contractor who is not Rick Lawrence to do it.
Sir, I thought earlier you had said maybe in a week you would try to get that before you go in front of city council.
The week was the actual structure, the corporation, and the like. Once we have the plans, it's very difficult now to get final plans and get numbers because the Ferguson building hasn't been fully designed. We can get historical numbers. We've already done that analysis. But to get a final number and get a GC, you need final plans.
Is there anyone else, Tom?
Doris is talking.
Oh,
Did you get that, Tom?
Yeah, he's
I didn't hear.
So the question was, are you making a commitment today that Rick Lawrence will not be a contractor or subcontractor or affiliated with this project in any way?
Yes, and no. Because he will be affiliated, I'd said at the very beginning, to assist us in bridging the gap between what was built there and what wasn't. But he will not be the contractor. He will not have decision-making process. And once the transition is made and everyone's paid, Rick will have no involvement in the project.
So I guess I could follow up behind Doris. How long will it take for all of them to be paid so that he will not be affiliated with the?
Well, we want to get started with the project as indicated at the end of December or beginning of January, and so that will be done before then.
And if you could explain that reasoning, with the contractors especially.
Right. I mean, our concern was, coming out of New York, buying a property, without keeping Rick involved. If we just, let's say, foreclose on the project, this is all right. That forecloses out Rick, it forecloses out the unions, it forecloses out everyone. And so our fear was, if we got rid of Rick day one, it would send the wrong message to the others in town that we were going to come in and do that. We wanted to be clear to everyone that we're not looking to hurt anybody. We've already agreed to make full restitution payment to the union of every penny they're owed, to every subcontractor, and we saw Rick's involvement being critical because he knows what was done, what wasn't done. He knows what was paid, what wasn't paid, and we felt that without his assistance in that process, it would really hamstring us. And I will say he's been very, very cooperative with us. He's provided everything we've asked him. He's helped us walk through the budgets and what was spent, what wasn't spent. He's walked us through the project and shown us the type of work that was done. He's provided the permits that were provided. He's provided the pay applications. And if we didn't have Rick, that's probably 6-7 months worth of nonsense. And trying to get with unions that are probably angry and subcontractors that haven't been paid, that information we would have never been able to get that information.
Have you worked with Rick Lawrence before? Has CFL worked with Rick Lawrence in the past?
I met Rick Lawrence when I came to Springfield.
No, CFL. You're not CFL, right?
No.
So has CFL worked with them in the past?
I have no information and no understanding or no belief that they knew him before they came to this town.
okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we'll stop now, and I will ask the commission if you have a recommendation to put forth to City Council.
That's a tough one, but I'll say this, just from hearing everything that I've seen today, and I'll lead this up to a motion that, from my perspective, the past is the past. The money that we've already put in, it's gone. And in my opinion, that isn't part of this discussion anymore. To hold our new people interested prisoner over whatever money we've already put in isn't a fair assessment. So from my perspective, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to put $3.1 million of tax increment financing into a project that we hope will be worth maybe $7 million on our tax rolls, and then we'll have tax increment that we'll receive from that over the years? and plus any ancillary benefits of having more people downtown and invigorating the economy. And to me, it's as simple as that. Do we want a $3 million investment to get this? And that to me, that's a lot of money to invest for us to get a $7 million tax roll property. But at the same time, if we don't, we have nothing. The other point I'm looking at is this may be a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to get someone interested in this project. I mean, there may be one or two local people that would want to do it in a different way, but as we've mentioned, there's some hair on this deal, and we've got an interested party that appears to me, from everything that I've heard and seen, can get us to the finish line, and that's rare and hard to find. So I think we all should think that through too. Not proceeding to me is almost a view of saying we're fine with it being vacant forever, to some degree. So with that said, I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
Who was the second? Karen?
Karen.
Would you call the roll, Abby?
Karen Kahn,
Yes.
Nate Fretz,
Yes.
Lakeisha Purchase, Dave Robinson,
No.
Sheila Stock-Smith,
Well, I was going to be yes until I just heard Dave's. That concerns me, given that he represents unions. Yes.
Mark Vance.
Yes.
So that's 4 voting yes, 2 no. The motion passes.
And I just didn't know if Sandy ever
Sandy
joined us.
Hamilton, did you join us?
Okay. All right. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. We
Appreciate
appreciate your time this afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And he'll be back, he'll be on Tuesday tomorrow night. Yep. In person next Tuesday in City Council.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, now we're going to talk about another exciting new project. Thank you, gentlemen, for waiting. Had no idea when you were going to do this that you were going to have to wait this long, but we appreciate. We've got an exciting project. It's called Public Market. It's at 4th and Adams, and today Tony Kokomo and David Lee are going to present to us, give us a little information about a project they have. Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Lee, and this is Tony. I'm one of the co-managing partners of this project at 4th and Adams, the Public Market. And we are extremely excited for this. I think everybody in this room here is no stranger to the needs of downtown Springfield and the revitalization efforts that have already been taking, but the importance of it moving forward for attracting and retaining the next generation of entrepreneurs, developers, investors, and our next generation of young professionals in this community. That's kind of what ultimately led me and Tony to meet. Was I moved back to Springfield about 5 years ago when I was 25, and got involved with Downtown Springfield Incorporated, and ended up being the chairman of the Momentum on Main Street Committee, which I actually spoke to this commission about a few years back. And this project became kind of the central focus of our time with what we were wanting to do to help the revitalization efforts, and we're extremely excited about it. So to kind of flip through some of these slides here to give you guys a couple images of the project. This is the building at 4th and Adams at 322 East Adams. If you could flip to the next slide, please. What is the public market? So many of you may be familiar with a public market concept or food hall, but this is going to be a multi-level food hall and event space featuring a beer garden and a rooftop bar, which will be Springfield's first. It's going to offer panoramic views of downtown Springfield with views of both the old State Capitol building and the new State Capitol building. Of course, we love the location of 4th and Adams. It's right at the epicenter of the farmers market, in which we will draw many ties with that. But that is the general design. If you go to the next slide, please. Here's our development team. So myself and Tony are the managing partners on the project. And one thing that we would like to point out on this is it's almost exclusively local investors that are investing some seed money as their capital in the project. And then we have some very creative financing that Tony will be speaking on today. And that's actually how Tony and I met, was through one of the Momentum on Main Street events where he spoke on creative financing, as his background is in that many years in real estate. Next slide, please. Here's the property. If you guys do not know the building, there's a picture of it in its current state. It is 15,000 square feet. It was a bank built in the early 70s. And after our renovations, we'll have over 21,000 square feet of usable space. Like I said, a 2-story food hall. And if you go to the next slide, that will feature 6 vendors. And the outdoor patio and beer garden, and the rooftop bar, as you see at the top there. And there's some renderings of some of the interior designs. 7 vendor spaces. The anchor tenant will be our entity, the public market. We will operate the liquor and be the sole operator of that. And then we will lease these 6 vendor spaces. And one of the things that's very interesting about this concept is, like I've said, many people have been to food halls or these type of spaces across the nation and in large metropolitan cities, is that you get a unique food interest in one space where there's multiple different food options. So we'll have 6. And to them, on their side, the benefits is that we're drawing a large crowd to this area, and they will have the benefit of that, plus also having a low capital contribution at the beginning versus building out an entire restaurant. We see this even more with COVID and the current kind of state of the restaurant industry. It is extremely hard and challenging. It already was, but especially in today's environment to run a restaurant. And of course, we've seen many fail, unfortunately, a lot due to the COVID environment. What this does during this time is it allows these smaller food entrepreneurs to take a chance and to take a risk and to hopefully succeed here and then hopefully bridge themselves to a full-scale restaurant at some point. Most of the people that we've contacted and that have interest and that we see having interest is individuals that are currently vendors at the farmers market or maybe food truck operators. So these kind of smaller food entrepreneurs that need a semi-permanent space, or will be a permanent space for them until they have success and hopefully go on to their own venture. So we're really a bridge between those initial entrepreneurial ventures that is maybe just out of somebody's house or at a food truck. We're the bridge to them being in a full-scale restaurant someday, hopefully. Of course, revitalizing the heart of the capital city. The reason we put this slide in is there's no other place we would have done this in Springfield. Like I said, we're all local investors who want to see the place where we live do well, and we want to love where we live. So the project at its location of 4th and Adams is just right in the heart of downtown, and we're extremely excited about being in that location and being a part of the revitalization efforts. And we think we have some very interesting ways of doing that, which I'm going to turn over to Tony to talk about some of the financing efforts.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, hold please. Yeah. Walk up to the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, I've got nearly 50 years in real estate development around the country. I'm originally from New York, spent 30 years in Chicago, and I've been here in the central part of Decatur for 7-8 years. Finished a big project in Decatur with ADM about 5 years ago. This particular project has amazed me. I was very proud to be able to ask by a bunch of the young professionals, we'd like to do this in our inner city. We looked at a bunch of buildings. This building stood out and amazed me, that kind of a quality of building in this location. So it gave us a lot of good location with good bones and a good opportunity to start from. The fact that we've been surrounded so quickly by 8 or 10 professionals from the Springfield area who got excited enough to chip in and do some of the seed capital to get this started has been absolutely outstanding. So broad support. What's become amazing is the initial response we've gotten. As you know, Val and Abby have heard us, and the mayor have heard us talking ad infinitum about the unbelievable response we've gotten, not just because it's a rooftop bar, but more of an upscale place that we're very attuned to post-COVID food and beverage industry. We've designed more outdoor spaces than indoor. Part of what we've done with this is, as he's mentioned, in our seed capital, again, we mentioned enough to put the thing together. We signed a contract to purchase the property and paid some significant fees up front. But then we're introducing something that's going to be very unique in the food and beverage industry anywhere that I've seen around the country. And it was because of the actual way that David and I met when I spoke here last summer about crowdfunding and creative financing. And by bringing the crowdfunding opportunity to this particular project, while I can't go into the exact details because there's some SEC requirements, we have a very difficult Form C to file, which is a few days away. The idea of crowdfunding means people can invest in projects as little as $100 and become an actual owner. It's not like GoFundMe or Kickstarter where you get a donation. This is real equity. So part of the reason for the time it takes to put this together is the SEC has very strict requirements. But once you meet that, you open up an entire new way to finance small or medium-sized deals. So in a case like this, we will have 1,000 to 1,500 small investors who own a piece of the public market, which is, that's the name of the brand, that's the corporation. The entity that owns the property is called Adams Fourth Holdings, not too original, but we own Public Market Limited. So we own the building and the business, and there will be no debt on the property. It's all equity, a combination of crowdfunding and a secondary or upscale of that called Regulation D for the larger investors. Smaller people do crowdfunding. Regulation B are the people who put in 25 or 50. Small people can put in 500, 1,000, 2,000. So we will have, this is really exciting, I think I mentioned it to the mayor, 1,000 to 1,500 people investing in a project in downtown Springfield, Illinois, in the food and beverage industry. I've never seen that done yet anywhere in the country. I really think this approach and what David and some of our professionals have talked about, adding these food vendors and giving them an opportunity to come in with almost no capital, which is where my background in real estate, we pointed this out several times. A lot of restaurants fail because they have a great idea and they know a great recipe and they have a nice idea for something, the ambiance, how they want it to look, but then they lease a place and spend millions of dollars on renovations and equipment, and they strangle themselves with a 5-year note. We're not going to have that. We're paying for everything. All the equipment, all the major infrastructure, all the seats, we own it all. The food vendors come in as both tenants and quasi-partners with us. And it opens up a great new exciting area. Some of the other things that have happened as we developed this plan with the financing is to reach out to Illinois craft beers and wineries and specialize in that and actually give them major chunks to come on in weekends, do special wine and food pairings from all over the state. There's a lot of interest in that. So this whole area of creative financing, that's how we've acquired the property. That's how we've started with some of the original local partners who have all stepped up and chipped in to do all the basic stuff that we've done. And that's where we've taken it from a difficult process that happens in the restaurant business to this idea of crowdfunding. I have to tell you, in all of my career, and I was telling this to Mayor, we've opened the doors there on Saturday mornings at the farmers market. We've had probably something 300 or 400 people come through in the last 5 or 6 weeks, and everybody's excited. We've had over 1,000 people like our Facebook page in a month. Now, we can't tell them about the crowdfunding until you file that Form C with the SEC. They're very strict. But I have to tell you, the early response just on what they've seen with these pictures and the renderings and the concept of what we're telling them, I mentioned this to the mayor too, and yesterday I said one of the things that amazed me is that we're telling people that we made a business decision, we're never going to have video gambling in the building. And I have to tell you, to a person, the women especially have been yay. So you get a feeling that we're touching some of the sensitivities, and I like that we've responded really well in the area of putting it together in a package and the financing to what the needs are that seems to be out here, and we've listened to that. David's had several focus groups that have talked and told us what they wanted, what they needed. We've designed to that. You see it, how some of the stuff has been upscale, the rooftop especially, and in my career, I've never seen anything like this that approached this kind of response, this kind of excitement and enthusiasm. We sometimes have to tell people when they come in, they're ready to start taking their checkbook out. I said, I can't talk to you right now. Put it away. We'll be out soon. But that's a really good sign. The enthusiasm, the excitement, the support we've gotten already from several of the people who are the aldermen and the EDC and the mayor's office. So that's been very exciting. I think this is so unique. This project will get written up all over the country in the food and beverage industry. Obviously, what we've asked you for, like everyone in development, even the gentleman ahead of us, is here's what we qualify for. We'd like to know as soon as we can what you think we're eligible for, and then let us go on out and do our promotions and do our work. I think you'll find that the area of this equity financing is not as difficult as a lot of people think it is once you follow the SEC rules and what's allowed. The interest and excitement, frankly, is more than we would have ever thought.
We don't have an actual request today. I just asked them to come and give you some information. They will be following up. Once they get all their other financing in order, then they'll be following up with a request, a TIF request. So, but I just thought that we should hear a little bit more about this ahead of time. So thank you. We really appreciate you coming.
Is there any questions for us from anybody here?
Just a comment, David, hi.
Hi, Shoot.
It's been a long time, and I feel very old with you being up there presenting this project. So I think it sounds like a great project. I think we're going to ask the same questions. So you kind of got a preview of the type of questions that I think are going to be asked. But certainly it sounds like an exciting project, and there's been many of us have been working on development for downtown for a long time. And this idea has kind of been around in various ways for a while, like with commercial kitchens or, various kinds of things. But I've been to these in other cities. Many of the large cities have, well, even some of the medium-sized cities have these, and they're usually just very successful. So, again, I would just say that we're going to probably ask you similar questions, and as we did to the previous one. But good luck.
Yeah, Thank you. We're open for any kind of questions or anything you'd like from us. Again, this area of creative crowdfunding and regulation D equity financing is relatively unique, but it's not an impossible challenge. It's frankly, I think, easier right now than bank financing.
Thank you for coming and presenting.
I hate to say that. Well, especially in the food and beverage industry,
Yeah.
you get a chance to get a bank loan right now. The food and beverage industry is 0 to none. And so this is something that's being, that happens. It takes a little work on the front end with the SEC, but once you do that, it opens up quite a lot. The fact that 1,000 or 1,500 people might invest in a project in downtown Springfield, in my opinion, is huge. That just doesn't give us 1,000 customers or 1,500 customers or 1,500 people selling. That's a commitment into this city in that downtown area. I think that's a major, major step forward.
Thank you.
Any other? Did you have a question? Oh,
Not a question, but we just look forward to you coming back and having concrete things put in place before.
we look forward to that too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, one of the final things on our agenda, if he's still around, Scott Dahl, are you still on the call? I may have lost him after this amount of time. I've been trying to text him. Tom, do you see whether Scott Dahl's on the call?
Yes, Scott is still on the call. Give me 1 second to have to mute him.
Okay. Oh, he says he's here.
Can you hear him in the chambers?
Nope. Here we go again.
What's wrong with the audio?
All right. Hang on 1 second, Scott.
Where's his picture?
Well, he just might not.
Oh.
I can hear you.
Is that his music? I think it's Dave.
That's his new promo.
Is he on yet? Scott, are you on?
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
The mic is on mute.
Put my headset on. Okay, Scott, can you hear me? I can.
We can hear Scott now.
Maybe he has bad reception.
Okay, Scott, go ahead. Floor is yours.
I promise you, he's got really exciting news.
You gotta be like the Geico. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? My first meeting is pretty long.
Scott, can you hear us?
I don't think.
Tom Chi, are you still on?
Apparently they can't. I can hear Scott and Nathan can hear Scott, but we thought everybody could hear him.
Oh, Nate, you want to translate? No.
Don't pay me enough for that.
I was trying to read Doris.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott.
Do I need to start over?
Pardon?
Start over? Hello,
Scott. I don't think they can hear you. I think anybody who is joining remotely can only be heard by those that are joined remotely. I don't think the people in the council chambers can hear you. It will practice.
Oh, well, we can hear Scott now.
It's Tom's.
Oh, it's Tom's.
Do you hear me?
Oh, I see.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, you can hear. This is Tom.
Yeah, I can hear you, Tom.
Okay, so Scott said that he can join next month if you want.
Okay.
I don't know how to get him in here.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Well, thank you, Scott, for hanging with us. If you can hear me, we appreciate it. Okay.
No problem.
Do you want to give an overview of that, Val?
Yeah, Val, I was just going to say, is that that's the sports project, right?
Yeah, it's just a sports complex.
So where is that at in terms of the process?
Okay, so you know that the city paid for phase one study, and then they left it at that, and then they put it out to developers to do a phase 2 study. So what's Luker's group called? Is it just is he Legacy Point or something? Anyhow, Legacy Point took the bull by the horns and went ahead and did the second phase study. And so he's going out now and presenting that the project could be at Shields. And they are asking the city for some incentives. And one of them, I should have brought my little group along here. One would be to extend the business district that's currently out at Legacy Point till for another, was it 20 years? Do you remember, Mayor, Mr. Zirkle? Do you remember how additional 20 years out?
I think so.
I think it was out to like 2043 or something like that. So to extend the business district.
Meaning the current tax incentive program that they've already got?
Yes.
To what?
Additional 1% would be extended for an additional 20 years, I believe.
Additional 20 years.
Yeah. Don't hold me on all this. My guys here up in you might know this, Brendan, better than I do off the top of my head. The other incentive that they're asking for is to the city's portion of the property tax, just the area where the complex would be built, to stay level, stay the same. So there would be no increase. So we would not receive the city's portion of property tax. Now, they're asking for the property tax on all the taxing bodies, but that's nothing we have to worry about. We just wanted we would agree, they're asking us to agree to forego our portion of the property tax on the area that will be developed as the actual sports complex itself. Not the outside areas, not the areas that would be developed further, but just that.
So is that like an alternative sort of formed TIF?
Yeah, a lot of the details haven't been worked out.
Right.
They're just throwing a lot of that out there as what other cities have done.
Right.
So it'd either be, some have done it publicly, some have done it public-private.
Yes.
And so that's what we're looking at. The real caveat is with regards to Shields' commitment, but Scott will give the presentation next week. And if you haven't gotten the information, we can send that to you.
Sure.
They gave a presentation at City Council, I believe.
And the final
2.
one is they're just asking for 1% sales tax, hotel motel tax.
A lot of that.
Three incentives that they're asking for. Who's they? Who's Legacy Point?
Is Steve Luker and is it partners?
Legacy Point is the Shields development. They own all the property out there.
So Shields owned all that? I thought
No, Legacy Point is the owner of all the property.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know that. Who is that?
So that's the Steve Luker's
Steve
one.
Luker and Dirk.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know
I
the
can't
other
remember
ones.
Dirk's last name either. So,
But all those will be questions you can ask them when they come next month, and they should come. It's not a city project to push. It should be the developer to come
But are they going to
and
come
reduce
to the EDC before they go to the city council?
Yeah, I don't know when they're scheduled. Have you scheduled?
Yeah, we'll have them
for
come
those?
here beforehand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Because that way it gets vetted better.
Right.
Well, that's.
You guys have good questions.
Yep.
If it doesn't do that, I kind of wonder why we're here, so.
No, that's how it should be. Yep.
Thank you.
Scott just sent a text that said he'll be here in 3 minutes, but
Oh,
in person.
Yeah, I think it should be waiting for the developer. I mean, Scott's just going to present, if you want to stay with the information, get the information you can, but the ones that have to answer the questions are the developers.
Right.
And there's still a lot of legwork to be done, with regards to developers agreement. None of that's been vetted yet. We're going to have to work through that process.
and then once anything's done with the city, then this is all private. I mean, then they've got to go out. The onus is on them to raise all these funds. So,
Well, I look forward to hearing from the developers.
yep. All right. Anything else? Any unfinished business? Okay. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, October the 13th at 10:30 in the library, unless we let you know otherwise. Yes.
Public comments?
Oh, there's no,
None.
yeah.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Well, we don't need one, but we can.
Second.
Robert's rule says if you have a scheduled next appointment, you do not have to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Yep. But if you want to, go ahead. All right. Thank you so much for your attention and your time today. Wow. Thanks.